Stop calling microservices directly. This one mistake breaks the production systems and is exactly why interviewers reject system designs. Today, I will show you how an API gateway can instantly improve your architecture, impress your manager, and keep your skills relevant in the market. Welcome to Training Guru. So let's take a real world use case and look at this. My browser customer microservice is running on the port number 4571 and the stock microservice on port number 4570. Let's try to access independently. Let me open the stock microservice and I just enter the endpoint stock and this is working. Let me close it. And similarly, let me access customer microservices independently and access the endpoint. This is also working. So both are working independently. That's fine. And yes, of course, they are already communicating with each other. Okay. So to explain this, let me again open the customer microservice and give one of the endpoints like customers and ID2 and see that I'm able to access the customer with ID2. And if I want to get the stock details of this particular customer, then I can add the endpoint stocks. Okay, so this shows that the stock details of the customer whose ID is 2. So the customer microservice is already talking to the stock microservice. So right now my front end is calling customer service, stock service, and maybe tomorrow payment service directly. Sounds fine until production hits you like a truck. So what if I tell you this architecture will break as your system grows? So today I will show you how an API gateway fixes this problem using real microservice setup, not theory. If you work with microservices, this video will save you from the future pain. So from this setup, right, you can see that slash customers calls the customer service and slash stocks call stock service. Okay, so what's the problem? The problem is that the client must know the service URLs, the port number, and which service does what. Okay, this is quite fine just for few microservices. Now imagine you have 10 microservices, you have different security rules, different versions, different environments. Boom, it's like a tight coupling, isn't it? The client doesn't care about where the services are running and which port number, which URL, they don't care about it. So this is where exactly the API gateway comes into the picture. Now the client can send a request to API gateway, which in turn forward the request to Eureka server. The discovery happens, then the Eureka server forward the request to customer service or stock service based on the request it has received from API gateway. The client doesn't need to remember 10 URLs. Instead, they just remember only one URL where the API gateway server runs and they send the request to API gateway and that's it. It takes care of everything. Of course, we have to write a routing logic. That's what we have to set up in API gateway. Now I will show you how to set up API gateway server. Create a Spring Boot application and add this dependency, just one dependency, Spring Cloud Starter Gateway Server Webflex. And then in application.yaml file, you define the configuration of routes. So you define the routing configuration and look at this. I have two routes. One is for customer microservice, another is for stock microservice. This says that if the request comes with this pattern customers slash whatever, then the API gateway will forward this request to the service which is running on localhost 4571. This need not be localhost, it can be any other external API also. Okay, so similarly, look at the second routing. So this says that if the customer request ends with the stocks followed by whatever, then this will be routed to this service which is running on another port number 4570, where I have stock microservice currently running. That's it. Okay, right, and the API gateway itself is running on the port number 8888. Now let me right click and run the application as a Spring Boot application. Okay, so this is running successfully, and see that Spring Cloud API Gateway started. And before that, let me open and show what is there in the main program. So there is nothing in the main program. Okay, all it has is just one annotation, the Spring Boot application, and here I just put this message for our information, so we can see that here. Okay, now let me go back to the browser and show you how these two microservices can be accessed with just one URL with just one port number. Okay, so let's open another tab and localhost 8888, and see that. So 8888 is where exactly my API gateway is running, and followed by customers. Wow, this is so beautiful. See that? Okay, so now as per the diagram, so we are sending the request to the API gateway which is running on the port number 8888, and then it goes and reads the configuration file, right? And the request ends with the customers. So the API gateway forward the request to here, and we don't see the port number here, port number of customer microservice. And similarly, if I want to hit a stock microservice, then no need to change the port number, just give the endpoint stocks. That's it. Okay, and also from the customers, you want to access a stock microservice, that also can be done. So now let us try to access all the stock details of the customer one. So customer /1 and the stocks. Okay, look at this. So the customer has two stocks which are showing here. Okay, but this is inter microservice communication. That's like a separate topic I'll plan to cover later. But right now, so this is how you can set up the API gateway. So in this example, I'm using Spring Cloud Gateway because it is lightweight, reactive, built for microservices. So just think of it as a normal Spring Boot application, but its job is just routing. So in real companies, API gateway is used for centralized security, single entry point, easy versioning, monitoring, and analytics. So if you want to block a client, do it at the gateway. If you want to add rate limiting, do it at a gateway. If you want to change a service URLs, client doesn't even notice that. So this is so brilliant. And mistakes the developers do. So from the interviewer's point of view, they may ask these questions, right? So big mistakes developers make. So calling microservices directly from front end, please don't do that. Another mistake, putting business logic inside API gateway, don't do that. So these are some common mistakes the developers already make, and the interviewers may try to ask these questions from you. Please remember, API gateway should route, not calculate. And API gateway is just an edge service, not a business service. So another interview question is that, so we have to always use a API gateway? No. If you have just one or two small services, and if you have no external clients, then API gateway may be overkill. But the moment you think of a scale, gateway becomes mandatory. So, what is a API gateway? It is a single entry point for all client requests in a microservices architecture. Instead of client calling multiple microservices directly, Instead of a client calling multiple microservices directly, the client talks to one API gateway and the gateway routes the request to the correct service. So look at the diagram, a microservice without API gateway. So the client sends the request to multiple microservices. And with the API gateway, the client sends a request to just one API gateway and that routes the request to all the respective other microservices. So how does it benefit the external clients? So without API gateway, the UI has to call multiple URLs like customers, order, payment, stocks, etc. But with the API gateway, UI calls just one URL. So, thank you for watching this video. If you like this, subscribe, like and comment. Believe me, I will read all of your comments. And want more videos like this? Tell me what topic you want in the comments and I will see that in the next video. So, if you want real microservices knowledge, not textbook theory, subscribe now and turn on notifications. Because this channel is all about writing code that survives production.